Okay, let's dive in. Some periods in history, they don't just happen, they actually create what comes next. Today, we're looking deep into ancient India's foundational era, the Vedic Age. We're talking roughly 1500 down to 600 BCE.
Exactly. Our goal here is to trace this pretty profound evolution for you. We'll start with the early Vedic period, think semi-nomadic tribes, the Rig Veda. Then we'll move into the later Vedic period. That's where you see settled agriculture, the rise of actual states.
Right. We want to see how these really deep structures of Indian civilization, social stuff, religion, politics, how they actually began and, well, changed over time.
And it's fascinating because our main window into this is literary. The Rig Veda, later Vedic texts. These are our guides.
They give us incredible insight, don't they, into these early Indo-Aryan communities. So let's start there. Early seeds, maybe 1500 to 1000 BCE. Picture this, a society where basically your entire wealth is just walking around. Cattle?
That's the early Vedic period in a nutshell. It was, relatively speaking, more egalitarian, kinship-based. Wealth was literally counted in cows. They even had this term gavishti, which just means search for cows, usually implying a raid or quest.
Uh-huh. Puts our hunt for stock options in perspective, right?
It certainly does. And politically, the core unit was the jana, the tribe, the rajan, the leader. Not really a king in our sense, more like a tribal chief, often chosen, needing consent.
And they had assemblies. That sounds quite advanced.
Oh, yes. Assemblies like the sabha, kind of an elite council, and the samiti, more of a general tribal assembly. It's got this proto-democratic feel. And remarkably, women could sometimes participate. Plus, the early varna system, the social classification, it was way more fluid then, based on occupation, not strictly birth.
Okay, so that's the early picture. But then things really shifted. Around 1000 BCE, maybe, you have this expansion into the Ganges River Valley, super fertile land, and they get iron tools. That sounds like a massive disruption.
Oh, it was a complete game changer. That's the shift into the later Vedic period. Iron tools plus fertile land equals settled agriculture, and that leads to surplus food.
Surplus, which means that you don't all have to farm or herd anymore.
Exactly. It allows for permanent settlements, bigger populations, and eventually these territorial states, the Janapadas and the Rajan. He transforms from that chosen chief into more of a hereditary monarch.
So power becomes inherited.
Right. And it gets bolstered by these huge, elaborate rituals. Think things like the Rajasuya, the royal consecration, or the Ashvamedha, the horse sacrifice. These weren't just ceremonies. They were powerful statements about the king's control over territory.
And I guess kings need money too.
Indeed. You start seeing regular taxes like paga, the king's share, and bali, which started as a voluntary offering but became more like tribute.
So, okay, politically things are getting much more centralized, hierarchical. What does this mean for everyone else, for society?
Well, the social changes were just as dramatic and, frankly, not always positive. That fluid varna system, it hardens. It becomes the fourfold hereditary system we know. Brahmana priests, Kshatriya warriors, Vaishya merchants and farmers, and Shudra laborers. Quite rigid.
And they use religious texts to back this up.
Yes, the Purusha Sukta hymn, which describes the classes emerging from parts of a cosmic being, became really important for legitimizing this hierarchy. And sadly, you see a decline in women's status. They lose roles in assemblies, in major rituals. Practices like child marriage seem to emerge in this period too.
A really stark contrast to the earlier phase.
It is. Religion also becomes more complex, very ritual-heavy, dominated by the priests. But interestingly, this period also gives rise to the Upanishads, a huge philosophical shift.
The Upanishads, moving away from just ritual.
Towards deep philosophical questions, ideas like Atman, the individual soul, and Brahman, the ultimate reality. It's a fascinating countercurrent.
So summing it up, we see this massive pivot from tribal equality and fluid roles.
To rigid social hierarchies and centralized monarchy.
Just a few centuries. Incredible.
It really lays the groundwork for so much of later Indian civilization. The Varna system, kingship tied to dharma or duty, even the philosophical streams that fed into Buddhism and Jainism. The roots are here.
So the Vedic Age didn't leave just one single legacy, did it?
Not at all. You could almost call it a dual legacy. On one hand, you have this sort of orthodox track hierarchy ritual, but on the other, there's this heterodox legacy to philosophical debate, questioning, even hints of non-monarchical Republican-style governance in some areas.
That's a powerful way to put it. An orthodox and a heterodox legacy, side by side.
And that dynamic tension, that interplay, you could argue it echoes right down through Indian history, even today.
Definitely something to think about. When you look around today, maybe at modern societies, modern governance, where do you see echoes of that ancient interplay, that tension between structure and questioning? Worth pondering until our next deep dive.